All right. So our portion this week is VaYeitzei, and I wanted to look at the sixth Aliyah today, and to talk about the issues there that had come up before in this week's Torah portion and last week's Torah portion. So VaYeitzei, the sixth Aliyah, in the Eitz Chaim, we're on page 181 near the bottom. In the Hertz or any other Chumash, you're looking for VaYeitzei, and the beginning of the sixth Aliyah, which is chapter 31 of Genesis, beginning with verse 17. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So why I'm starting with the sixth Aliyah is because in last week's Torah portion, we're introduced to Jacob and Esau, the twins who are born to Isaac and Rebekah. And we're told that one of them is the favorite of one parent. Jacob is the favorite of Rebekah, or he's loved more by Rebekah, and Esau is loved more by Isaac. And then the next thing we know, they're grown up. Esau's a hunter. He's been out in the field. Jacob is at home. He's cooking a stew. Esau wants some of that stew because he's exhausted and famished. Jacob says, sure, if you sell me your birthright. So right there, we're told. Now we have no idea. We have no idea how old they are at this point. We only know they've grown up. We don't know if this is the first time Jacob is treating his brother this way, or there's a history of Jacob and Esau not getting along, or Jacob not being generous and kind to his brother. We don't know, but that story was impactful enough to be included in the Torah portion. And then, so there's that act of, I don't know, I wouldn't call it chicanery or anything, just greed, an act of greed in which, for the sake of his brother's starvation, he's demanding the birthright. Then, of course, the famous act of deception in which Isaac wants to give a blessing. Is it his deathbed? We don't know. He's old. His eyes have grown dim, and he wants to give a blessing to Esau. And he wants his favorite food. So Esau goes out, and then Rebekah, of course, hears this and wants Jacob to get that blessing, not Esau. So she and he agree that he'll dress up like Esau, put skins on his arms to make him hairier, and go into his father with food that Rebekah's making in order to receive the blessing. So Isaac, how much does he know about how Jacob is deceiving him or not? We don't know. I would imagine from reading the text that he is aware of this and is going along with the plan. So Jacob gets the blessing. Esau hears about this, says that he's going to kill his brother, and Jacob runs away to the home country to Rebekah's brother Lavan and their family up there to find safety and also to find a wife. So that's where we are with this week's portion, Toldo. So we have this history of deception, tricks being played, and how it results in anger and threat on Jacob's life. Okay, so there's that aspect of the story. The deception continues in this week's portion, right? Which we're not going to read. We're going to just providing the context until we get to the sixth Aliyah. So the one issue is Jacob falls in love with Rachel. He understands who she is from the other shepherds that are at the well, and the fact that he's stricken with Rachel causes him to be able to move the cover off of the well. Something that usually we're told in the Torah that it takes a few of the shepherds together to move the stone off the well. Here, because he's so enamored with Rachel that has enabled him, that has riled up the adrenaline in him, enabling him to move the stone off the well. He kisses her. This is the first kiss that we know about in the Torah. Isaac and Rebekah were caught by Avimelech looking through the window. Isaac and Rebekah were metzachek. They were, I don't know how to translate that. It's clear that there is some sexual intimacy going on there that Avimelech has spied upon. Okay, so whatever that metzachek is. So there is that first time of some kind of intimate behavior that is registered in the Torah, but this is the first kiss described in the Torah, and he wants to marry Rachel, and Laban agrees so Laban also incurs a price for this. Esau wants food to fulfill his drive, his hunger, his instinctive drive. He's hungry, he wants to eat. Jacob says, hold on, sell me your birthright. Jacob has his drive, his love for Rachel. Laban says, hold on, work for me for 7 years. Jacob says, okay, I'll accept the deal. And it didn't seem too bad of a deal because the Torah describes it as the 7 years flew by as just a matter of days. And then Laban plays a trick on him, making him marry Leah instead of Rachel. The fascinating thing is in the Midrash, there's extended details to the story in which Rachel and Jacob come up with a code so that because Rachel and Jacob think that Laban's going to play a trick on them, and that he'll try to have Jacob marry Leah. So the Midrash has it that both of them kind of know Laban's tricks. But in the end, Rachel is the one who gave in and had Leah marry Jacob first. And so the story from the Midrash is supposed to say, don't think that it's Laban's trickery alone, it's also Rachel's compassion for her sister. So it's interesting the details that the Midrash adds to the story, but there's that trickery there. Yes, Saul?
Yeah, can you review with me what do we know about Laban's religious orientation? Is he an idol worshiper?
We're going to get there in this sixth Aliyah. Okay,
Okay.
so I'm just providing, right. So then the next trick, so he marries Leah, and then Jacob says to Laban the next day, what did you do? Why did you play this trick on me? Oh, in our place, the younger never goes before the older, which could be a reference to Jacob getting the blessing instead of Esau, because Esau is the older one. So he agrees to work for 7 more years and marries in order to marry Rachel. Okay, so there's that, and then come there's 6 more years that happen after those 14 years, and that's where we are now, where Jacob says to his father, I want to leave, I want to go back to the homeland, and I'd like to have some sheep, some flocks to go with me. And then there's more tricks being played there. And Jacob says, I'll agree to the unusual flocks, the unusual colored flocks, the darker skinned and the spotted and striped, because goats and sheep don't usually come that way. So Jacob's agreeing to just take a few. So Laban takes whatever's left of those dark-skinned, dark-colored, and spotted and striped, and he goes with his sons, with his flocks, away. So leaving with some of the flocks away. So there's other flocks behind that are not dark colored and are not spotted and striped. And Jacob puts some unusual kind of sticks into the troughs of water, and that makes those sheep spotted and striped. And now um, they're ready to leave, and that's where we are with the sixth Aliyah. So I just wanted to say that, providing that lengthy background, just to remind us of the tricks that Jacob plays, the trick that Laban plays, tricks that Laban plays. So it's an ongoing story that has of our patriarchs and matriarchs that is filled with deception and tricks. Okay, we'll talk a little bit after we read this story as to why, and the story will continue through the end of Genesis about more tricks and deception that people play on each other. Right? Think about Joseph's brothers who sell Joseph into slavery, but then kill an animal and use that blood on Joseph's coat that they bring back to Jacob to say that Joseph was eaten by wild animals, right? So the tricks and deception come back to haunt Jacob, but also there's got to be some bigger context for this too. So let's read the sixth Aliyah. They're about ready to leave Laban's home to head back to the land of Israel. So we're at verse 17, bottom of 181, the start of the sixth Aliyah. Vayakom Yaakov, vayisa et banav ve'et nashav al hagemalim. So Jacob got up and lifted his children and his wives on camels, right? So it's, in other words, he loaded them in the station wagon as they're ready to go on their trip home. Vayinhag et kol miknehu, he was leading all of the livestock, 182, ve'et kol rechusho asher rachash, and all of the property that he all the possessions that he acquired, miknei kinyano, all of the livestock as well. Asher rachash b'Padan Aram, that he acquired in Padan Aram. Lavo el Yitzchak aviv artza Canaan, to go to, or to come to, or to return to Isaac his father in the land of Canaan. 19, Velavan halach ligzoz et sono. So Laban went to shear his sheep. So we'll see sheep shearing also again later in the book of Genesis. Don't know much about sheep shearing. Okay, here's the commentary right here on 182, 19 there on the left-hand side, to shear his sheep. In Mesopotamia, sheep shearing took place in the spring. It entailed much hard work on the part of a large number of men who often had to labor at a considerable distance from their homes for extended periods of time. Thus, Laban, his sons, and his menfolk would all be far away and busily preoccupied, an ideal time for Jacob to make his departure. Okay, shearing sheep, they didn't have electric sheep shearing devices like they do today. And bizarre things come up on my YouTube feed when I go to YouTube. One of the things that comes up every now and then is people shearing sheep. I don't know why it comes up, and it looks like it takes 5 minutes to shear a sheep. But that's because of the electric sheep shearing implement that they're using. But if you're just using scissors, it's hard to do, and it's hard to keep the animal still while you're shearing the fleece off of the sheep or the goat. So anyway, Laban went to shear his sheep. Vatignov Rachel et terafim asher la'aviha. And Rachel stole the teraphim, these household idols, it's translated here, that belonged to her father, which gets to Saul's point. Do we know if what was Laban's religion? I will say before this point, or maybe it's coming up, that God speaks to Laban. So there is a point in this portion where God speaks to Laban, even though he might still be an idolater. Okay, so it's unclear exactly what Laban's religion is, or if he has a particular religion. So the fact that God speaks to him serves God's purpose in this story, that and sometimes God does speak to non-Israelites. God speaks to Balaam the prophet in the book of Numbers. So there are, I know that there are one or two other instances of non-Israelites that God speaks to. Oh, God spoke to Avimelech in a dream to tell him not to harm Isaac and his household, right? So God speaks to Pharaoh, or at least hardens Pharaoh's heart. So God uses other people, non-Israelites, for the bigger purpose. So that Laban can still be an idolater, but for the point of our story, God needs to speak to him too. So Rachel, for whatever reason, steals her father's idols, these teraphim. So now, if we look below the line, why did she do this? It doesn't say in the text. Although Rachel probably took the teraphim because she believed in their power, we don't know why she took them. The sages credit her with taking them to prevent her father from continuing to worship them. So, of course, the rabbis in the Midrash would say, Rachel is going to the land of Canaan with her husband, with her sister, with all their children. Perhaps she herself is converting to the God of Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, and Rebekah, and the God of Jacob. So perhaps she wants her brother to go along with this too, and maybe that's why she's stealing the idols. Who knows? We don't know. Maybe she's stealing them because it's just a family trait to be a conniver, a deceiver, a trickster. And maybe she's just, her brother is like this, her husband is like this. Maybe she has some traits like that as well. So we don't know what the motivation is for her to take these idols, but she does. But it has an important impact. 20, Vayignov Yaakov et Lev Lavan Ha'arami al Beli Higidlo Kivo Reyahu. Okay, so now Rachel steals the idols. Now Jacob is stealing the heart of Lavan the Aramean, for the fact that he did not tell him that he is fleeing. Okay, so it's interesting. The Torah is talking about it as fleeing, where it seems like they had reached an agreement that he could leave. So there should be a different word, like that he was leaving. In other words, they had agreed that he would be leaving, but he didn't say when he was going to be leaving, and he's waiting till Laban and Laban's kids are out with their sheep at the sheep shearing place. So while they're away, they leave. Okay, so maybe it's called that it was like sneaking away when the family's not around. All right, but the point is it's the same word that Rachel's stealing the idols. So it's a physical object that she's taking, and Jacob is stealing the heart of it's an abstract kind of stealing, stealing the heart of Laban the Aramean. 21, Vayivrach v'chol asher lo, vayakom vayavur et hanahar, vayasem et panav har hagilad. So he fled and all that was with him, and they got up and crossed over the river and faced, they turned in the direction of the Gilead mountain, or the hill country of Gilead. So the hill country of Gilead is essentially the Golan Heights today in Israel, some like around there, and the Padan Aram is beyond Damascus. So what river is it that they're crossing? We don't know. It's just called the river, and it doesn't even suggest in the bottom, in the above the line commentary, which provides some explanation for us. It doesn't explain what river it is. And now it could be there's another river that they cross in next week's portion, the Yabok, but we don't know what river this is. Okay, so he's leaving and he's heading in the direction of the Golan Heights. 22. Vayugad lilavan bayom hashlishi kivarach Yaakov. On the third day, either on the third day after they went to the sheep shearing, or the third day after Jacob and his family left, we don't know which third day it is, but on the third day, it was told to Lavan that Jacob had fled. Vayikach et echav imo, vayirdof acharav derech shivat yamim, vayadbek oto bahar hagilad. And so he took his brothers with him and pursued after him for 7 days, and caught up with him at the Gilad hill country. Okay, so Jacob had stopped at the Gilad hill country, and that stopping enabled Laban and his family to catch up. 24, Vayavo Elohim. Here's the reference I was saying about God speaking to Laban. Vayavo Elohim el Lavan ha'arami b'chalom halayla. The God came to Laban the Aramean in a night dream. Vayomer lo, and said to him, Hishamer lecha pen tedaber im Yaakov mitov adra. Be careful, or watch yourself, lest you tedaber. So I'm going to translate it literally. Lest you speak with Yaakov, good or bad. Watch what you say, is the literal translation here, verse 24. Now, it says here, beware of attempting anything. So I'm not sure why the English is translating it that way. It's really a stretch from tedaber. Tedaber means to speak. So the literal translation 24 is God tells Laban in a night dream, watch what you say, good or bad, to Jacob. The English is saying, watch what you do. Okay, not sure what you, attempting anything above the line on the right-hand side. Once he has Jacob in sight, Laban encamps for the night without making contact. He then experiences the dream. Okay, not really explaining to us why the English translation takes liberties with the word tedaber. Okay, 25. Vayaseg Lavan et Yaakov. Laban caught up to Jacob. Yaakov taka et ohalo bahar, and Jacob had set up his tent at the mountain, or on the mountain, at the mountain, on the mountain. Velavan taka et echav bahar hagilad, and Laban set up with his brothers at the Gilad hill country. Okay, so is it the same place? I think they're camping at the same place. 26. Vayomer Lavan liYaakov. Laban says to Jacob, Me asita vatignovet lelavi vatenaheg et benotai kishvuyot charev. Laban says to Jacob, what have you done by stealing my heart and leading my daughters as captives against their will, or like captives of the sword? Okay, right? They were taken with weapon violently against their will. Okay, so why did you do this? Why did you steal my heart? 27. Lama nachbeta livroach. Why did you flee stealthily or flee in secrecy? Vatignovoti. You stole me, or you have misled me. Velo higadatali, and you didn't tell me. Va'ashalechacha besimcha uveshirim betof uvechinor. I would have sent you off with joy and with song, with drum and harp, violin. I don't know, modern Hebrew, that kinor is a violin, or it could be a harp. In ancient Hebrew, possibly it's translated here as a lyre. You know, that curvy, like handheld instrument that has 5 or 6 strings on it. You know the pictures. You've seen those pictures. Timbrel. I don't know what a timbrel is, but in modern Hebrew, a toph is a drum. So it could be like a handheld conga drum. You know, either the conga drum that you can have sitting in front of you and you're in a chair and you're tapping it on the top like that, or it could be an under the arm kind of drum, perhaps. It could be a tambourine. Not sure exactly what the toph is. Modern Hebrew toph is a drum, but it's that kind of conga drum. Okay, I would have sent you off with I would have hired musicians and we would have had a party, a going away party. You stole that from me. 28. Velo nitashtani linashek levanai velivnotai ata hiskalta aso. So this, I have to look at the English translation. You did not even let me kiss. Okay, lo netashtani lenashek. You didn't give me the opportunity to kiss my sons and daughters. Now you have hiskalta aso. It was a foolish thing for you to do. Yeah, samach kaflamed is a word for a fool. So you've done foolishly. You've acted foolishly to make me upset in this way. 29. Yesh el yadi la'asoti machem ra. I would have had the God-given right for my hand to do something bad against you. The Elohei avichem emesh amar elai lemor hishamer lecha midaber im Adonai im Yaakov mitov ad ra. I would have had the God-given right to do bad to you, but the God of your fathers last night told me, saying, watch out from speaking with Jacob, good or bad. Or, if we're taking the English translation, your God told me not to do anything good or bad to you. Okay, but I would have, and I had the right to do this because of how you fled stealthily and stole my heart, but your God told me not to do anything, so I'm not doing anything. 30, Va'ata haloch halachta ki nichsafta levet avicha lama ganafta et Elohai. 30, and now you went because you were longing for your father's house. I understand why you're leaving, but why did you steal my gods? All right, so he waited to say that last. You stole my heart, and he's grieving about that verbally. And then the very last thing, I understand why you're going, but why did you take my gods? 31. Vaya'an Yaakov vayomer lelavan. Jacob answered and said to Lavan, Ki areti ki amarti pentigzol benotecha me'imi. Now he's apparently answering the first part of what Laban's upset about, not why he stole the gods, but why he stole his heart, because I was afraid, ki areti, I was afraid, because I said, perhaps he would steal my children from me. I thought you would take your daughters from me by force. So gezol. So yes, gezel, as opposed to geneva. This is geneva is stealing, but gezela is stealing by force. Okay, so I thought you were going to steal my daughters from me. You'd prevent me by force from leaving. Like you would have threatened me by taking my daughters, taking your daughters. Yeah, your daughters. Right. That's what I was afraid of you doing. 32. Im asher timsa et Elohecha. Now he's focusing on the second part. So stealing the heart is because I was afraid you're going to steal your daughters, my wives. And why did I steal your gods? Im asher timsat Elohecha lo yichyeh neged achenu. Hakir lecha ma imadi v'kach lach. V'lo yada Yaakov ki Rachel genavatam. So if you would to find your gods with anyone here with me, that person who has the gods will not live or will not remain alive. In the presence, and neged achenu, in the presence of our brothers, of our kinsmen, point out what is with me and take it for yourself. And Jacob didn't know that Rachel stole the teraphim, the idols. Now, I want to stop here for a second because Jacob is indignant with his father-in-law. He has, why? It's one thing to accuse him of stealing his heart. And Jacob agrees that he's stolen his heart, but he's explaining why he did it and that he has good reason to do that. But the stealing of the gods, Jacob has no idea that Rachel did that. And so Jacob becomes indignant about it. So we understand now that later in the story, that is next week's portion, Rachel does die in childbirth, giving birth to Benjamin. And the rabbis put it together with Jacob's oath right here. So Jacob says, whoever you find, if what you say is true, whoever you find your idols with, they're gonna die, or they won't live anymore. And Jacob's right. So he did not know it, but he's foreshadowing, foretelling, prophesying what's going to happen to his wife. Okay, so one thing that the Torah is teaching us here is the dramatic and tragic consequences of deception. So here is one such dramatic consequence. Rachel steals the idols. Jacob doesn't know that she's done it. Jacob's indignant with his father-in-law with his accusations, and out of anger saying, I know for sure this did not happen, and whoever did it will die. Did Jacob really mean that? I mean, you can understand somebody saying something like that in a fit of anger when one member of the family accuses another member of the family of something, right? We all know this within our own families, or we know it about from other families, that people say things that they regret later. And they don't mean saying the things they say because they're said in a fit of anger. Okay, so we can understand that, but it's more than that, because Jacob has a relationship with God. God has spoken to Jacob. Jacob has spoken back to God. And so when one is on that level, because not too many people that we know of have a relationship like that, that can say, I know that God speaks to me and I speak to God. It's an ongoing dialogue, or an every now and then kind of dialogue. That's most people that we know don't have such a dialogue. And if they did, then we know they'd be on a higher spiritual plane. And because Jacob's on a higher spiritual plane, according to the rabbis, then he has to know that whatever he's going to say, even if it's a fit of anger, is going to come true. Okay, so that's one thing within the story itself about the consequences of deception, right? And we have that in a couple of weeks when in the portion VaYeitzei, when we have that about the brothers selling Joseph into slavery and the deceptions that they play with their father Jacob, and what are the consequences of that. And then also the story of Judah and his daughter-in-law Tamar, that's in that portion as well. And the deception about that Tamar plays on Judah, the game that she plays with him, and the consequence of that as well. So there's lots of consequences that happen soon in the Torah, or within a portion or two, or later in the Bible, right? One consequence of Judah and Tamar is that becomes an ancestor of King David. So for the Bible, there's a more global Bible as huge book, the consequences. But then there's also the bigger spiritual lesson that we learn. Why the focus so much on deception, that the ancestors of the Israelites are found to do, right? And so this gets to perhaps an understanding of when the Torah is written, because we know from history, or at least based on how the prophets are describing it, that the people of Israel are not exactly a good people all the time. As the prophets point out, the book of Kings points out, it's very few years at a time when the people of Israel are worshiping God alone. Most of the time, the people of Israel are worshiping God in the temple in Jerusalem, or the alternative temple that was built in the northern kingdom of Israel. And the rest of the time, they have their own household idols or household altars that they're making sacrifices to as well, which is a violation of the Torah and the laws of the Torah. So the prophets preach against that, which could be seen as kind of a deception of God, right? On the one hand, you're making sacrifices in the temple in Jerusalem. On the other, you're still doing these things back home, and you're deceiving God. You're not clothing the naked. You're not feeding the hungry. You're offering sacrifices on your home altars. These are all deceptions that we're doing too. So perhaps if we think that the Torah was written around and edited, taking these oral traditions and editing them around the time of King David and the later kings of Israel, and a time of religious deception, perhaps this is explaining the DNA of the spiritual DNA of the people of Israel. That why are they theologically deceptive? Because they are actually deceiving kind of people. They're a conniving kind of people. So here are the stories that are the origin stories for how we got to be a conniving people. Okay, so we have an origin story of the snake and Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden to explain why we have the evil inclination in us. Lots of origin stories of the first 11 chapters to explain humanity. And then origin stories to explain who we are as an Israelite people. And on the one hand, we are a we have that human weakness of being deceptive, or at least telling white lies and not being a truthful kind of people. And perhaps these stories here in Genesis explain to the people of Israel why they are the way they are, and to highlight if, and despite all the deception, God is still with the people, Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob, Rachel, and Leah. God is still with them, even though they are deceiving, right? Abraham lies about who Sarah is when they go down to Egypt to escape the famine, telling the people of Egypt, telling Sarah to tell the people of Egypt that she's his sister and not his wife, right? The deception goes back to Abraham and Sarah. So God is still with them. God still makes a promise to them. And perhaps these stories can say, even though the people of Israel are a deceiving people, if only we acknowledge it and apologize for it, God will still be with us too. So perhaps that's a bigger lesson from this too. All right, that's what I wanted to look at today. Any questions or comments or thoughts about this? All right, so I wish everybody a good rest of the day. Happy Thanksgiving. Hope everybody enjoys whatever kind of Thanksgiving celebration you're going to have. And see you next Wednesday for another Torah study. Take care, everybody.
Thanksgiving all.